Faith was supposed to save souls. Money was supposed to serve kings. No one expected a banker to rewrite the rules of God. For centuries, religion told humanity how to live, how to die, and what waited on the other side. It promised certainty in a brutal world. But beneath the incense and prayer, beneath the rituals repeated for generations, something else was always present. Something quieter. Something necessary. Something dangerous. Money. And at one moment in history, the relationship between faith and finance changed so completely that religion itself would never recover its old authority. Not because of a prophet, not because of a conqueror, but because of a banker. This is the unsettling claim at the heart of this story. That one financial mind, operating inside the most sacred institution in the Western world, altered the structure of belief itself. Not by challenging God directly, but by changing how salvation was funded, measured, and sold. And in doing so, he helped fracture Christianity, ignite rebellion, permanently redefine the boundary between the spiritual and the economic. To understand how a banker could change religion, we have to return to a time when faith ruled everything. Medieval Europe was not just religious. It was religious by design. The church was the largest landowner, the greatest moral authority, and the final judge of truth. Kings bowed to it. Peasants feared it. Heaven and hell were not metaphors. They were destinations. But the church was also an institution, and institutions need resources. Cathedrals did not build themselves. Armies defending the faith did not march for free. Rome, the eternal city, was expensive. And as Europe grew more complex, the church's appetite for money grew with it. This was a world before modern banks, before national treasuries, before financial transparency. Gold moved slowly. Accounting was primitive. Trust was personal. And into this world stepped a family from Florence whose name would become synonymous with money itself. The Medici did not begin as kings or saints. They began as traders. Merchants navigating the narrow streets of Florence, a city where wealth mattered more than bloodlines and intelligence mattered more than titles. They were outsiders to old aristocracy. Viewed with suspicion by nobles who saw commerce as vulgar and dangerous, the Medici learned early that money was power, but only if handled quietly. They built their fortune not through conquest, but through calculation. They mastered double-entry bookkeeping, a revolutionary idea that allowed wealth to be tracked, multiplied, and hidden with precision. They built networks across Europe, lending to kings who despised them, financing wars they would never fight, and slowly becoming indispensable. And yet, for all their wealth, they faced a wall they could not buy through easily. The church condemned usury. Charging interest on loans was considered a sin, a crime against God, a violation of natural law. This was not a minor obstacle. It was existential. The turning point came when the church itself needed what only the Medici could provide: liquidity, stability, reach. The papacy, ruling vast territories and entangled in endless political struggles, was perpetually short on cash. It needed bankers who could move money across borders without wagons of gold. It needed discretion. It needed expertise. The Medici stepped in. What followed was not a hostile takeover, but a partnership, a quiet one. The Medici became the papal bankers, managing church finances, collecting taxes, paying armies, financing monumental projects. In return, they received something far more valuable than interest. They received influence, and influence changes. Rules, through careful legal language and theological flexibility. The sin of usury began to soften. Interest was no longer interest. It became a fee, a service charge, a compensation for risk. The language changed, and with it, morality adjusted. This was not hypocrisy in the crude sense. It was adaptation. The church told itself that it was bending without breaking, that intention mattered more than mechanism, that God understood complexity. But something profound had shifted. Money was no longer outside faith. It was inside it. As the Medici rose, they did not just fund popes, they became popes. Leo X, born Giovanni de' Medici, ascended to the papal throne with a banker's mind and a prince's confidence. He loved art, culture, and grandeur. Under his rule, Rome became dazzling and bankrupt. To pay for this vision, the church leaned harder into a practice that had existed for centuries, but now took on new meaning: indulgences. Indulgences were framed as mercy, a way to reduce time in purgatory through acts of devotion. But under financial pressure, they became transactional. Donate money, reduce sin, fund the church, save your soul. It was efficient, scalable, profitable, and devastating. The psychological effect was enormous. Faith became quantifiable. Salvation became something you could afford or not. For the poor, it felt like betrayal. For theologians, it felt like corruption. For bankers, it felt like a system. The backlash was inevitable. In 1517, a monk named Martin Luther nailed his objections to a church door. He was not attacking God. He was attacking a financial structure that had wrapped itself in theology. He accused the church of turning faith into commerce, of confusing grace with revenue. The irony is brutal. The very financial sophistication that allowed the church to dominate Europe also planted the seed of its fracture as Protestantism spread. It rejected not just indulgences, but the entire idea that salvation could be mediated by an institution. Faith became personal, direct, uncapped. Wars followed. Nations split. Millions died. And the authority of the Catholic Church was permanently weakened. The Medici, meanwhile, endured. Their political power eventually faded, but their legacy was complete. They had helped transform religion from a unified authority into competing interpretations. From centralized power to fractured belief. From unquestioned dominance to permanent doubt, public reaction to this shift was complex. Some saw liberation. Others saw heresy. Many blamed bankers, popes, foreigners, anyone who could be named. Conspiracy theories flourished. Fear followed money, and yet there was no simple villain here. The Medici funded art that still defines beauty. They supported science that challenged superstition. They enabled the Renaissance, one of humanity's greatest cultural awakenings. But they also demonstrated something dangerous: that belief systems, no matter how sacred, bend under financial pressure. As centuries passed, the old religious order never fully recovered. Churches adapted. States took over functions once reserved for faith. Money, once condemned, became neutral, even virtuous. Capitalism emerged, not in opposition to religion, but from its transformation. Today, the echoes are everywhere. Megachurches, televangelism, prosperity, theology, faith packaged, marketed, optimized. The tools are modern, but the pattern is ancient. The banker did not destroy religion. He rewired it. And that may be the most unsettling truth of all. That belief is not just shaped by revelation, but by infrastructure. That morality evolves alongside accounting. That when faith depends on funding, its rules will eventually change. The camera drifts through empty cathedrals and crowded stock exchanges. Candles flicker. Screens glow. The same human longing animates both spaces, and the final thought settles in, heavy and unresolved. If money once changed the rules of religion, what is it quietly changing now while we're too busy believing the rules are eternal?